When you're hunting a suspected murderer, you can never be quite sure which clue you find is going to lead to an arrest. So you follow all of them.
How did we do it? Good old-fashioned police work.
Police in New York announced to the world yesterday they caught the man they believe shot and killed a health insurance CEO last week. They say someone spotted him at, of all places, a McDonald's hundreds of kilometers away. It's this one right here on East Plank Road in Altoona, Pennsylvania, which is about a 4-5 hour drive from where the killing occurred.
But what was the suspect doing?
He was sitting there reading.
But good old-fashioned police work doesn't quite explain all the leads that went nowhere.
He had discarded a water bottle, a burner phone, and some protein bars. This really didn't yield information that led to his arrest.
And knowing how this manhunt ends gives us a new appreciation for the clues that were staring us in the face all along. Let me take you through it. One of the first things police did in their investigation of the shooting was to build a timeline. Not just where did the suspect go after the shooting, but where had he just come from? Had anyone seen him? Did he have a paper trail? Was he even from New York? Police had this as a starting point. Video of the shooting itself with some important details. Note the backpack, the hoodie, and the gun with an elongated barrel. Looks like a silencer attached to it. But police would have to pore through literally thousands of hours of similarly grainy surveillance footage across the city to piece the bigger picture together.
It is a painstakingly slow process, and one that takes up a lot of hours of law enforcement effort. Sitting in front of computers, poring over hours and hours of video to come across that 1 5-second interval where that person comes through that frame.
By watching footage of the moments leading up to the shooting, police realized very quickly that their shooter had been staking out the hotel. He seemed to know where his victim would be, suggesting this was all pre-planned. Police also came across this, footage of the suspect buying a drink at Starbucks, again, just before the shooting itself. Now we see the suspect's eyes and a mask covering the lower half of his face. But the clearest view we would get of the suspect would be inside this building, where he reportedly stayed for more than a week before the killing, and where a careless moment would show us exactly what this man looked like.
The suspect's face is in full view. His mask is down, he's smiling. There were several reports quoting police sources that the suspect may have been flirting with whoever was behind the desk at the hostel, and that he obliged when asked to pull his mask down.
The man police now believe is Luigi Mangione, checked in 10 days before the killing. But nobody then knew him as Luigi. They knew him as Mark Rosario. ABC News obtained this image, saying it's the New Jersey ID used to check into the hostel that police have said is fake. But this ID would become very important later, and images like this would drive a massive public campaign to find the killer.
The chief of detectives and the police commissioner made the decision to release as much of a photo that we had at the time. If you see something, say something, but most importantly, do something. And they did.
Now, even with photographs of the suspect, there's no guarantee that you'll actually catch the guy.
In a case where you have photographs and you put that into databases and nothing comes up because there is no prior arrest, that makes it very difficult for law enforcement.
And there's a similar challenge with fingerprints. Before the shooting, police say the suspect bought a bottle of water, which they found later. That meant that his fingerprints, even the DNA from his saliva, would have been traceable, in theory.
Police now say they got a fingerprint off the water bottle, but it's smudged and may not be useful.
But if those things don't exist already in an easily accessible database somewhere, if police never fingerprinted him for a crime or took a sample of his DNA to begin with, what do you check those biometrics against? The suspect didn't appear to have any kind of real paper trail either. He paid with cash at the hostel. Police thought he might have escaped the crime scene on a city bike, that's New York's bike sharing network, which is GPS tracked. But that didn't turn out to be the case.
This is operated by the company Lyft, who came out soon after the shooting to say that they were ready to help police with tracking the bike and the path that it may have taken. But as the story developed, it turned out that the suspect was using a regular bike.
In the early days of the chase, police received hundreds of tips from the public. Officers went door to door, canine teams searched on foot, drones searched from the sky, divers searched underwater. And for a time, the suspect always seemed to be one step ahead, almost taunting those who were looking for clues. You remember that backpack that he was wearing? Police say they eventually found it, discarded in New York Central Park, packed with Monopoly money. And at the scene of the crime, the 9mm shell casings strewn about.
Bullet casings, like out of the movies, reportedly with handwritten messages on them. 3 words: deny, defend, and depose.
Deny, defend, depose. A likely nod to this book, a sharp critique of the insurance industry, which the shooting victim was a part of. All of these things would come together 5 days after the manhunt began.
The suspect was in a McDonald's and was recognized by an employee who then called local police.
In the end, it was that simple. He was apparently just sitting there, eating, about 450 kilometers west of where the CEO of an insurance company was shot down in cold blood, Midtown Manhattan, on a Wednesday morning. And when police arrived, they started asking questions.
Very calmly, police approached him. They asked him to take his mask off, and then he handed over a fake ID. And then when police asked, "Were you in New York recently?" that's when he started to visibly shake.
And from there, it all seemed to unravel quite quickly. I'll let police explain exactly what they found, and then we'll go over the bits and pieces.
Responding officers questioned the suspect, who was acting suspiciously and was carrying multiple fraudulent IDs as well as a U.S. passport. Upon further investigation, officers recovered a firearm on his person as well as a suppressor, both consistent with the weapon used in the murder. They also recovered clothing, including a mask consistent with those worn by our wanted individual.
So, did you catch all that? Let's recap the police account. First, multiple fraudulent IDs, including, police say, the New Jersey ID the suspect used to check into that New York City hostel. Police also recovered a firearm and a suppressor, both consistent with the weapon used in the murder. They have this video footage to thank for that connection. Police recovered clothing and a mask, also among those items seen in a variety of surveillance images captured during the investigation. And there was one other detail that made it glaringly obvious to police that they may have just caught the man they were looking for.
Additionally, officers recovered a handwritten document that speaks to both his motivation and mindset.
According to various media reports, it was a 3-page manifesto railing against the insurance industry and writing about the crime in the past tense. These parasites had it coming, and I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done. The note also reportedly condemned companies that continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it.
He seems that he has some ill will toward corporate America, but that will all come out as part of our investigation. We're not done here.
That's completely out of touch and an insult to the intelligence of the American people.
Luigi Mangione is facing several charges in the state of Pennsylvania, including forgery, showing law enforcement false identification, and carrying a gun without a license. Police say the gun he used was a so-called ghost gun, assembled from 3D printed parts, and therefore untraceable. In New York, meanwhile, Mangione faces similar charges, but with one key difference. There's also a charge of second-degree murder. That's a Class A felony, punishable by up to life in prison.